Let's practice. So here we have an ellipse equation. X squared over 16 plus y squared over 9 equals 1. So first thing I'm going to look for is the center. Remember, that's h and k. So just like we did with the parabola, I could rewrite this x and y to be x plus 0 squared and y plus 0 squared, which helps me see the centers pretty quickly at the origin, 0, 0, which makes things way easier for us. Next, we need to identify the major axis. The major axis is whichever number is bigger. So in this case, I notice the 16 is bigger, so that's going to be my major axis. And remember, this is the number squared. So to find the major axis, I actually need to square root that bigger number to get that my major axis is 4. Now, to know if this is 4 side to side or 4 up and down, we look at what letter it's paired with. This 16 is paired with the x. X is always side to side, so that means I'm going to go 4 to the left and 4 to the right, and that will be my major axis. Left and right, because once again it's paired with the x. So 4 to the right, 4 to the left, and at the end of that major axis is my vertices. So now I can come in here and say I have a vertices at negative 4, 0 and positive 4, 0. So now let's do my minor axis. That's the smaller number. Once again, it's always square root. So square root of 9 gives me 3. And notice that this 9 was paired with the y, so that should be up and down, because y is always up and down. So I'm going to go 3 up and 3 down. And at the end of that is my co-vertices. So my co-vertices are at 0, 3 and 0, negative 3. So it looks like the last thing I need to find are my foci, and then I can graph it. So foci, we're going to use our C equation. And it's always the big one squared minus the little one squared. So my big axis, my major axis was 4. So 4 squared minus the smaller one, the minor axis, squared, gives me square root of 16 minus 9, which is the square root of 7. So my C is the square root of 7. And remember, your C always lies on your major axis. So I need to go square root of 7 out on the major axis. Now, knowing where square root of 7 is kind of difficult, so I'm going to get that as a decimal, so it's a little easier to graph. It's 2.646. So I'm going to go 2.646 out on my major axis. And that gives me where my foci go. Now, to write out the foci, we want our foci points to be exact, so we're not going to use 2.646, we're going to use square root of 7. So these points are at square root of 7, 0, and negative square root of 7, 0. And finally, now that we have everything labeled, we can go through and make this look ellipsy, and you're done. Ta-da! You graphed your first ellipse. Now, before we move on, there's one other thing you might be asked to identify on your test, and that is where the major axis and minor axis are. Now, we know the major axis is 4 long, but what is the line that the major axis lays on? So we notice here's our major axis. That lies on the line y equals 0. So we're going to say our major axis is 4 long on each side at y equals 0. And that's probably that's usually how they word it on your test. That's what they ask for. Then our minor axis is this line. So that is at x equals 0. So our minor axis was 3 long at x equals 0. So that is everything that you would need to know for your test. I would like you to practice now. So we're going to fast forward to example 4, where I want you to use this equation to find all 6 things. Your center, your major axis, your vertices, your minor axis, your co-vertices, and your foci. So use this equation, look back at the other example if you need to, find all 6 things and graph it, and then come back to check and see how you did. Let's check your answers. So first thing I have is my center. Switch the signs to get it at -1, 2, so I graphed it right there. Major axis is the bigger number, so I took its square root to get 5 long. Now that is paired with the y, so I know it's 5 up and down. So I went 5 up, 5 down, and I got my vertices right there at -1, 7 and -1, -3. Minor axis is the small one, so square root of 9 gives me 3, and I know that's paired with the x, so it's 3 side to side, which gave me my co-vertices at -4, 2 and 2, 2. Then for the foci, I take the major axis squared minus the minor axis squared, which gave me square root of 16, which is 4. Now remember, that has to be on the major axis, so I went on the major axis and I went 4 up, 4 down to get my foci points. Now, once again, I almost forgot. I always forget this part. I need to list the line that these are on. So my major axis is right here on this line, which looks at x equals -1. And my minor axis is right here on this line, which is at y equals 2. And that's everything. So you have now practiced graphing a couple of these ellipses. In the next video, we're going to start to do some application problems with these ellipses.